I've asked lots of people to complete this task, and generally speaking, people will rate drink driving or drug driving and any kind of handheld phone use, so texting or physically holding your mobile phone whilst driving, as the most dangerous things. And I think that makes a lot of intuitive sense. Generally speaking, people will then put hands-free phone use and conversation with the passenger as less distracting and less dangerous. And probably at the bottom of the pile comes having some kind of distraction within the vehicle, such as noisy children, arguing children, or a screaming baby or something like that. I think that order makes a lot of intuitive sense. So when I ask people why they've put them in those orders, the first answer is, of course, that drink or drug driving or any kind of handheld phone use is illegal, and therefore you shouldn't be doing it. And we all know that you can get prosecuted if you're caught for engaging in any of those kinds of activities. We also know, of course, some of the effects of drink and drug driving, and they're very clear and very publicised. So again, that makes a lot of sense. When I ask people why they rate hands-free mobile phone use as less dangerous, they tend to say, well, it's legal. It's perfectly legal. And therefore, in a way, we're encouraged to do that. If we're going to have a phone conversation, let's be legal, let's be safe, and let's have a hands-free phone conversation whilst driving. And again, many people will say, well, there's little difference between having a hands-free phone conversation and talking to a passenger within their car. And therefore, those are equivalent, really, in terms of danger. And then finally, when we address the issue of having an in-car distraction, such as a screaming child, people will acknowledge that it is distracting, but it's something that you can perhaps phase out or you get used to, and it's not kind of interactive in the same way. And of course, there's nothing illegal about having a child screaming in the back of your car. So all of that makes intuitive sense. The other thing that people have told me when they've completed this task is, listen, when you have a hands-free phone conversation, you've got both hands on the steering wheel and you've got both eyes looking at the road ahead of you. Therefore, what's the difference between that and talking to a passenger in your car? Again, I think that makes a great deal of sense. But actually, if we look at what research tells us, the picture's slightly different. In fact, any type of phone use, handheld or hands-free, is equivalent in terms of dangers as drink or drug driving. And that means in terms of driving performance. So we're talking about being 4 times more likely to be involved in an accident if you're having any type of phone conversation. And the effects on your driving performance are remarkably similar if you're talking on the phone compared to if you're inebriated whilst driving. So the effects that you might be familiar with is obviously accidents and crashes, but other effects such as strange speed choices, weaving in and out of lanes, not using indicators, not checking mirrors. All of those factors come into play when we look at hands-free phone use whilst driving, as well as handheld. So our research has been able to demonstrate that actually having your hands free doesn't actually improve the situation greatly in terms of your safety. We've been able to demonstrate that you can have 2 hands on the steering wheel, 2 eyes looking at the road ahead of you, but if your mind is elsewhere, you can look directly at a hazard, yet fail to see it. And we know that because we've tracked our participants' eye movements. When we later say to them, look, you looked at this hazard, why didn't you react to it? The response is, I simply didn't see it. So it's all very well having 2 hands on the steering wheel, and I absolutely advocate that for safe driving, but actually you need to have your mind on the road as well. A thing that comes up commonly when I talk about this kind of research is that people say, listen, I have phone conversations all the time, hands-free whilst driving, and I don't have any accidents. Therefore, it's not an issue. It's no different from talking to a passenger. Well, there's a lot of research which has compared talking to a passenger and talking on a hands-free mobile phone. And they've demonstrated that actually there's a big difference. And the difference comes down to shared environment. So a passenger within your car can see what you can see. They can regulate their conversation accordingly. So if something challenging happens in the driving situation, they can stop talking and they can stop demanding your attention. And they may even help point things out that you haven't perhaps noticed. Someone who's talking on the phone doesn't have that benefit of that shared environment and are not necessarily invested in your safety at that level because they're unaware of the situation that you're in. And therefore they will consistently demand your attention. So it's all a case of having mental dexterity as well as physical dexterity. So having your hands on the wheel isn't enough. The issue of people saying, well, listen, I do this all the time and I don't have accidents, that's fine, but actually what our research shows is that distracted drivers are generally unaware of how unaware they are. So you may well be having a phone conversation, not using your indicators, not checking your mirrors, and you don't have any kind of catastrophic accident as a result of that. What you might be less aware of is, of course, that lots of other road users are changing their behaviour to accommodate yours. So they're getting out of your way, they're giving you a big headway distance because they can see that perhaps your driving is altered in some way. It could also be that up to this point, you've been relatively lucky. And it only takes one event to change that, which can result, of course, in a catastrophic accident.